Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Our celebration of Star Trek's 50th anniversary continues with Star Trek's second incarnation, The Next Generation. We've of course looked at the Next Generation movie comics, but our look at Next Generation comics has been a bit on the odd side. The first episode I did featuring them was the crossover with the X-Men, which of course took place after not only the series, but 2 movies, so it wasn't a proper introduction. After that was a Christmas episode, done entirely in rhyme, a concept that most of you found completely sublime. Then 2 movie adaptations, the Patreon-sponsored crossover with Doctor Who, and a live show where I looked at the first Next Generation comic ever made. And since I try not to do multiple videos on the same comic, I decided to skip that first issue for our look at the series for this year. Not that I need to anyway, since I've got a whole 4 more comics of this 6-issue miniseries to go over, and they're all just as stupid. Despite never giving a proper introduction to the Next Generation, I think by now most people who have watched this show get the drift. It takes place around 80 years after the original series, during a time when the Federation was at peace with the Klingons, the Romulans were beginning to become a larger threat again, and humanity was really arrogant about itself and loved to talk about how the 20th century was full of awful people because we dared to use money. A lesson that CBS and Paramount have taken to heart. Which is why they're totally okay with Axanar. The smug asshole behavior of early TNG eventually softened thanks to Gene Roddenberry getting kicked upstairs, well, that and the removal of his scumbag lawyer Leonard Maislish, and the show became more of what it's fondly remembered for. Technobabble!
Using multimodal reflection sorting.
Oh, but I kid. One bit I don't think we've covered before, though, is Q. Played by John Delancey, Q is a representative of an entire race of all-powerful beings, the Q Continuum. So, of course, they're all called Q, although we can probably surmise that their actual names are unpronounceable, and having any name like that is just for our sake. We don't actually know very much about the Continuum, but there are some things we can glean. They seem to see themselves as cosmic guardians, shepherds of the universe, meant to foster positive growth in lesser beings and keeping potential threats to the universe at bay. In the first episode of The Next Generation, Q appeared to judge humanity, saying that they had expanded too far, too fast, and that they were a bunch of unthinking animals that would likely kill anything around them.
I believe my exact words were a dangerous, savage child race.
Yeah, that's it. Eventually, they passed the test set forth by Q, but he reappeared many times throughout the show. Q himself has many interpretations of his character, as an agent of the Continuum, as an imp who torments lesser beings for his own amusement, that sort of thing. However, in his earliest 2 appearances, his problem was really that he was over the top, as much of Season 1 of TNG was anyway. Today's issue is actually the first of a 3-parter involving Q, but we're only going to look at the first bit. Because let's face it, these early TNG comics are so terrible that I can milk this for years, just like that Leaves of Grass storyline from Batman Shadow of the Bat. So let's dig into Star Trek The Next Generation number 3 and see how much marijuana was involved in this story too. The cover is awful and really goes to show what happens when you try way too hard to make stuff look dynamic. Look, I get it. We've seen a lot of Star Trek covers on this show and how it's usually just people standing around, but that doesn't mean you need to crank it up to 11 by tilting the camera and twisting Captain Picard's spine around. See, Star Trek truly is all about equality. Even men like Picard will do Escher girls-like posing of his top half swiveled around so we can see his chest and ass at the same time. Although I don't think the intent is to show off Picard's boobs. The scale of this is completely insane, too. Apparently the helm and operations chairs are huge. They look comfier than the captain's chair. Oh, and the operations console is apparently sliding off of its base. Although on a second look, I'm pretty sure that isn't the stand, but rather a console attached to the view screen, and that the artist thinks helm and ops are all one big long console. And then there's Q himself, who I guess for an in-joke, they've dressed up as one of the weaponers of Quard from DC's Antimatter universe. Is the big revelation of this comic that Q serves the Anti-Monitor? We open in space! Of course, in a rather impressive splash page with Q's face forming out of nebula and stars, with one of his hands even made up of planets and suns. I guess when Moby was singing "We're All Made of Stars," he was talking about Q. Or maybe this is what Dave Bowman saw when he looked into the monolith. Although I hope you enjoyed this epic vision of Q as powerful and intimidating and, well, cosmic. For the rest of the book, he's that annoying child sitting next to you on an airplane who keeps poking you for laughs. Anyway, Captain's Log time. Captain's Log, stardate 42125.7. Which means this takes place right around the beginning of Season 2, and thus a whole bunch of continuity errors. Yes, I know episode stardates. I'm a colossal dork. How is it you guys don't know that yet? Having successfully introduced the Krieg, a race of energy siphons, to our Federation on Tarod. The Krieg, if you'll recall, are that race of Grinches from the previous issue. And that's how you know how accepting the Federation is. They even welcome those who steal Christmas. Also, apparently all you have to do to join the Federation is party with them. The Enterprise makes its way on impulse power to Phaltos, the first planet outside the charted periphery of Sector 902. And since you're going at impulse power and not warp drive, you're doing the equivalent of trying to circumnavigate the globe on just roller skates. You're technically making progress, but it'll be a while before you get there. Phaltos is apparently more of a legend than anything else, which makes me wonder how you have interstellar travel but don't know if a planet is there. Then again, they're trying to approach this place at sublight speeds, so maybe the generation ship that returned only had mad scribblings left over to tell the tale. Inside the ship, we see Tasha Yar engaging in an activity that I've got to imagine was a regular pastime. Hunting Wesley Crusher with a phaser. How could I have let that little monster escape me and get this far away from me? Captain Picard would have my head if he knew his chief security officer had slipped up so.
Lieutenant, I'm very disappointed in you. Next time we go up against a slime monster, you're going in first.
Well, at least I'm a main character. That should keep me safe. Actually, amusingly, with that stardate, that means this takes place after Tasha was killed.
I think it's very nice of you to give that dead woman another chance.
Come to think of it, considering the events of yesterday's Enterprise, that clip takes on a whole new meaning. What was I talking about? Oh, right, shooting Wesley. But yeah, Tasha shoots him and he falls right on his head. Ow. To be fair, I don't hate Wesley nearly as much as you might think. In fact, 9 times out of 10, he's not the most insufferable person in the early seasons. Sometimes he is, but there's a reason why SF Debris has an award on his show for the most annoying character in any given episode, and that usually rotates around. However, Wesley was apparently faking it and then fake shoots Tasha. Wesley Crusher, you sneak! How could you turn on me like this? After all we've done together. After all we've meant to each other. Wait, during the Naked Now, when Tasha got drunk, did she sleep with Wesley too? Yeah, this was all some sort of weird game, and it seems Picard is now standing over her.
Very entertaining, Lieutenant Yah. An award-winning death scene if ever I've seen one. Arguably better than your actual one.
Let me explain, sir. I was only playing with young Wesley, sir. I was only acting like a child along with a 16-year-old while on duty. And I know I should know better, but You did order Wesley to learn every aspect of the ship, and, well, security maneuvers are important. Yeah, but I think in the event of a security problem, we're not going to trust the safety of the ship to the teenager in the ugly sweater. Tasha starts pointing out her own backstory involving never getting to play much as a child, but Picard interrupts to point out that this kind of bullcrap was stupid to do in the hallways, especially with so many civilians around, and really should have been done on the holodeck. But sir, the phasers weren't even what? We saw Tasha's phaser fire and hit you, kid. Or is this like in the Elite Force comic, where we have an exterior shot of the ship for the captain's log, despite it being a simulation of the interior run only on the holodeck? As in, really unnecessary flair for dramatic effect.
Frankly, I don't know many helmsmen who'd conduct themselves so poorly either.
Yeah, and I don't see very many helmsmen wearing those sweaters, Picard, but you seem to allow it. After Picard walks off, Wesley inquires about Tasha's backstory, and she explains about growing up on Turkana 4, a planet with a failed colony that eventually erupted into civil war, then anarchy and lawlessness. You know how Mos Eisley in Star Wars was described as a wretched hive of scum and villainy? Yeah, Turkana 4 wishes it had it that good. Tasha explains. Narcotics dealers, slave dealers, trembling women. The trembling women were the worst criminals around. They'd rip off your face and eat it as soon as look at it. Tasha eventually escaped from it at age 15, and I'm actually quite surprised that backstory was approved, frankly, given Gene Roddenberry's insistence that the future and the Federation were all sunshine and rainbows and communism, and the continual insistence that humanity evolved beyond a desire for violence and stuff. I can imagine colonies failing because of salt vampires in Gene's worldview, not one that topples its own government and eventually devolves into Mad Max. Anyway, Tasha is called down to the bridge, where they've discovered a strange alien vessel that seems to be abandoned due to no lifeform readings, yet Counselor Troi can sense some sort of presence over on it. They decide to send an away team over consisting of Tasha and Riker. May I recommend that several members of Tasha's security team accompany them, sir?
Good idea, Counselor.
This happened in the first issue, too. Why is the ship's therapist the only one who thinks that away teams should have security personnel with them? Data and Geordi volunteer to come along too, but Troi suddenly snaps at them. Data? LaForge? No! You're both going to be needed here! Have I got this comic all wrong and Troi is actually controlling everybody? Why the hell is she giving orders about the away team? Scares me when she pulls that Betazoid prediction stuff. Telepaths! Betazoids are telepaths! And not even Troi is one, since she's half human. She's an empath! I tried to look up to see if this was in an early writer's Bible or something, that she had every psychic power on the book, but I can't find any evidence of that. Did they just make that up for the comic to try to make Troi more useful? So anyway, Yar and Riker beam over alongside Ensign Target Practice and Lieutenant 2 Days to Retirement. The ship seems to be fully online, just lacking a crew. The two main characters split up from the two gold shirts, and color me surprised, there's a strange noise in the direction of the two random security officers. Back on the ship, Troi is insisting that they bring the away team back.
Your readings are valued, Deanna, and are more often than not very accurate.
Her readings? Does Troi do tarot now, too?
But right now, we must know what we're facing, and so far we have no evidence that Riker, Yar, and her men cannot handle the situation over there.
I mean, it's just an unknown alien ship in the middle of nowhere, and you're having precognitive visions of danger for the away team. They're fine. Yar and Riker find Ensign One Foot in the Grave and Lieutenant Casket Filler, but they're actually alive, just unconscious on the ground. However, Riker is suddenly whacked backwards. Something hit me! And now he's being possessed by a demon, it looks like. Oh no, Santa is back from the last issue and he's pissed! Riker is being attacked by some invisible foe, which knocks him out. They also slap the phaser away from Tasha's hand, finally revealing themselves as figures in cloaks that Tasha recognizes. As the away team is finally beamed over, the cloaked figure swears that she can't hide from them any longer. Whoever it was has caused Tasha to seize up in some kind of post-traumatic state of shock. Troi arrives and tries to help her out of it, but not in the way you might think, what with her being a counselor and all. No, she tries to use her psychic powers to get into her mind and help her. This really sums up the problem with Troy's character, not just in the comic, but in the show overall. As I said before, Gene Roddenberry had this thing about future humanity not having any vices whatsoever, no sense of trauma or grief, even to the point where children were apparently not supposed to mourn dead parents, and that's a bit of idiocy for another day. So it makes one wonder why the hell there even is a counselor on the damn ship. But that's just a small issue, since, as I said earlier, that kind of thinking was mostly jettisoned once Season 3 hit. No, the problem is that Troy is a counselor, a psychologist and psychiatrist who assists in the mental well-being of the ship's crew and passengers, and studies up on health issues relating to those topics. The problem, though, is that none of the writers are experts in those fields, so often Troy's counseling came down to, how do you feel? And what do you think about that? And her actual advice could come across like she was an idiot. But whatever, let's move on. Tasha is blocking Troy's efforts to use magic feel-good powers to wipe away her trauma or whatever, so she's wheeled away to sickbay too. Back on the bridge, Data confirms that there's nothing like this ship in their database. And finally, Q shows up. And for some reason, he's dressed like a 16th century sea captain. It's what he was wearing when he first showed up, but he was doing so as part of an effort to demonstrate humanity's long history of warfare and oppression. Here, he's doing it because I guess the creators of this book thought that was his thing, to dress up in silly outfits. Anyway, for some reason, Q is egging on Picard to fire on the alien ship. Though it certainly wouldn't do to go on record as having wiped out a new race that was proven weaker than you humans. That would be viewed as bullying, and your Federation superiors might frown on that, mightn't they? When the hell did Q turn into the kind of asshole on Twitter who thinks they win a fight if they get blocked? Q, I should have realized you might be responsible for this mystery ship. Why? You've met him 2 times before this, and neither involved him making mysterious spaceships appear. At this point in the series, you have a higher statistical chance of it being the Ferengi. Or a disease that makes people drunk. And before anyone brings up the mysterious ship and encounter at Farpoint, no, that ship was going to appear regardless of Q, to the point where, in the first draft of that story, the Q stuff wasn't even part of the script. But whatever, Picard tells him to get the hell off his ship. Perhaps you'd better do as I advise, as it would appear your enemy might have taken my similar suggestions to heart. You miserable Data! Alien ship is indeed firing upon us, sir. Wow, took you guys a while to realize that, huh? Starfleet's best and brightest, everyone. But yeah, the ship is firing on them and sending everyone flying around in inexplicable ways. Look at this, Geordi has somehow flipped onto his side despite sitting in his chair before, Picard is tripping while declaring a touchdown, and Data is trying to change a light bulb. Had you but listened to me, an entity proven to you time and time again to be your better 1 billion times over, your pathetic shielding would not be necessary. You would have already been standing victorious. But no, you doubted my words, preferring to rely on your own puny powers of reason. You want us to trust your word, Q, after what you put us through the last 2 times we crossed paths? Don't worry about those times, worry about what he's doing now. Clearly he's making your body misshapen, Picard, by removing your stomach and making one leg thinner than the other. And of course, in the middle of a battle with a foe of unknown capabilities, Picard tries to tackle Q. Naturally, he just passes right through him.
Are you ever not going to fall for that?
As Q continues to pontificate about how he's just trying to help, Data reports that they've taken some minor damage to the ship's living quarters. The civilians! Captain Picard to sickbay. Status of Commander Riker and the rest of away team. The civilians? Screw them! I only care about the main characters. Actually, he needs Riker up here to take command of the saucer section. The idea is that the saucer section of the ship can separate, allowing the civilian population of the ship to be safe on the saucer, while the star drive section engages in battles. It's a very useful idea that, in 176 episodes, was used all of 3 times. And in one of those times, it was actually to provide a second target for the enemy. Whoops. Oh, and Q turns into a soldier from World War III because Well, that's what he did in Encounter at Farpoint. Oh, and there are those stupid minor characters, the Bickleys, in their uniforms that are only in this comic. The ones without pants. And then there's Picard telling us that he once caught a fish this big. Why is it that a Star Trek comic from over 25 years ago is reminding me of a Greg Land comic with its bizarre poses? And now, as the saucer separation sequence completes, it's time for Riker to declare a touchdown. Picard begins actually fighting back against the alien ship, which I guess has been just kind of waiting for this whole thing to finish up, like a transformation sequence or something. The ships begin their battle, but on board the alien ship, the invisible force operates some kind of transporter and beams over to the saucer section, which is spotted by Wesley, because I guess we needed a reason for him to be in this thing other than embarrass Tasha. While Wesley distracts Dr. Crusher, Tasha suddenly wakes up from her state of shock, screaming that he has found her. And soon, giant ghostly hands are grasping the saucer. The last thing a Star Trek toy sees. The alien ship is disabled despite only being hit once, and Q tries to get Picard to finish them off. Your desperation is beginning to show through all your pomposity and posturing. One might even get the feeling that all of this savagery you're so anxious to attribute to the Federation is merely a projection of your own insecurity.
Blasphemy. You're lucky I don't cast you out or smite you or something.
And that's what Q actually does, zapping Picard back instead of just rolling his eyes or making a quip. Q threatens him again, but Picard has had enough. Then do it! I'm fed up with all your tests and games and deceptions. Wipe me out! Wipe them out! And then be on your merry way, telling yourself you're not guilty of exactly what you're accusing us of. At least then I won't have to hear your line of bull anymore. Captain Picard, sophisticated, gentlemanly, apparently this close to literally saying BS to an omnipotent being. The alien vessel is actually crewed by humans, it would seem, and they swear they have no idea how to run the ship, that their leader has abandoned them and they need help. Picard says this is all obvious in hindsight, that they were defeated so easily, and that with Q's fixation on humanity, of course the alien ship would be run by humans. To boldly spin doctor where no one has made excuses before. Q then takes on a Starfleet uniform with captain's pips, except he's a gold shirt for some reason. I don't know, maybe they were afraid he'd look too much like Riker or something? But yeah, he keeps insisting on them being aggressive, but Picard just beams over the 4 occupants of the ship. I'm still captain of the Enterprise, Q, unless you want to simply take her away from me. Take her from you? You know I cannot do that. It's against their rules. They'd take away my Sea Captain cosplay. Picard suspects that he's referring to the Q continuum. As I thought, even with all your power, you are powerless. You have presented yourself to us as some sort of judge in the past, Q. Is it that you are the one who is being judged on this occasion?
Oh, please.
The crew of the alien vessel comes to the bridge, revealing that they were promised by Q success if they attack the Enterprise. Q yells out his involvement with the test is over. You have all failed! Who has failed, Q? The way I understand these results, you're the one who's failed.
You obtuse piece of flotsam.
Data and Geordi point out that with all this nonsense, the saucer section has vanished. And so our comic ends with Q declaring that he's not responsible for this, but that they have been watching. And now they're all going to be judged. Actually, with all the goofiness on display here, I'm pretty sure they're going to declare it a mistrial. This comic sucks. Aside from the fact that the dialogue is really stilted, Q himself is written in such a terrible manner. Even his 2 first appearances on the show feel restrained compared to this, where he's just randomly changing clothes and egging on Picard to kill things for no discernible reason. Both of his previous encounters had very clear goals that he was trying to accomplish, reasons for what he was doing. Here, though, he's just afraid of the continuum and will randomly zap Picard if he calls him out for bullcrap, when in the past he'd either make a joke or just leave in a huff. He's not a child, he's not friggin' Trelane, he's an omnipotent being with a purpose. And that, of course, is just on the writing side of things. There's also just the awful artwork, from the lack of backgrounds to the completely inaccurate backgrounds about what the ship looks like. And let's not even get into how the artwork by Pablo Marcos is really unsuited for Star Trek, with very lanky people and their very clearly defined musculatures that make ridiculous poses all over the place. This was just terrible. Next time, some comic book quickies, along with a bit of celebration for another franchise's 20th anniversary. Wait, during the Naked Now, when Tasha got drunk, did she sleep with Wesley too?
It never happened.